My name is Madison Brooks. I'm 32 years old, a financial analyst working remotely for an investment firm based out of Boston. For years, my life looked like something out of a well-curated magazine spread, peaceful, polished, enviable. We had a beautiful house tucked away in the quiet suburbs of Burlington, Vermont, surrounded by sugar maples and soft morning light. My husband, Ethan Caldwell, was 35, a charming, clean-cut marketing director at a rising tech company. People described us as that couple, the kind who always smiled in photos, always showed up together, always seemed in sync. We were building something, a future, a family. Or so I thought. That illusion shattered on a crisp October afternoon. It was his mother's 60th birthday. Cynthia Caldwell. A grand celebration hosted at her lakefront home, with white tents, catered hors d'oeuvres, and a string quartet playing Vivaldi like we were in some kind of movie. I arrived late, distracted by the fact that just hours earlier I had seen 2 pink lines on a plastic stick in my bathroom. I hadn't told Ethan yet. I was still trying to find the right words. But I never got the chance. 'Cause that same night, in the middle of champagne toasts and polite laughter, I discovered the man I loved was not only having an affair, he was planning to get rid of our unborn child. The very life I had just found out was growing inside me. The betrayal was instant, and it cut clean through bone. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. It started like this. That morning, I stood in the bathroom, hands trembling as 2 faint pink lines appeared on the pregnancy test. I must have stared at them for minutes, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and joy. 3 years of waiting. 3 years of silent tears each time the test came back negative. And now, finally, it was real. Life. A heartbeat I hadn't even felt yet, but already loved with every inch of me. I wanted to scream with happiness. To run down the stairs into Ethan's arms, tell him we were going to be parents. That our dream, the one we held on to through every doctor's visit and whispered prayer, was coming true. But something held me back. Maybe it was the small velvet box I had found in the bedroom drawer the night before. Inside was a pair of gold earrings, elegant, expensive, and definitely not my style. When I asked Ethan about them, he barely looked up. "I was saving those for the company holiday party," he said casually. "Thought I'd surprise you." His eyes didn't meet mine. They drifted somewhere past my shoulder, like he was performing a line he'd rehearsed. Then his phone, face down on the kitchen table, vibrated with an incoming text. He didn't check it. He didn't have to. I didn't say another word. Just nodded and walked away. But something cracked inside me, a hairline fracture I tried to ignore. That afternoon, our home looked like something out of a postcard. The soft, golden light of fall poured through the windows, making everything look gentler than it really was. I'd spent hours preparing for Cynthia's birthday party, Ethan's mother. The table was laid out like a magazine spread. Linen napkins, roasted beef with garlic herb crust, pumpkin bisque in ceramic bowls, and her favorite bottle of red already breathing on the counter. I wanted the night to be perfect. Not just for Cynthia, who had never quite warmed up to me with her sharp ex-lawyer eyes and pristine taste in people, but for Ethan, for the family, for the idea that I still belonged in the world I had married into. In my mind, I had pictured a moment near the end of the evening. When the laughter had quieted and the candles had melted just enough, I would take Ethan aside, place his hand gently over my stomach, and whisper, "We did it." It was going to be sweet, intimate, ours. But that dream fell apart inside the very home I'd tried to keep whole. During the party, I played my role with practiced grace. I smiled, poured wine, accepted compliments on the meal like I hadn't been dying inside for months. Then, dressed in his navy blue blazer and carefully tousled hair, looked like the perfect husband. Until he disappeared somewhere around the entree. Lauren, his sister, the 30-year-old doctor who never forgot to remind people she worked at Mass General, laughed over her glass of Syrah. "He's probably hiding in his office," she joked. Checking emails like always. Something in my chest tightened. I excused myself politely, pretending to need more cutlery, and walked down the hallway toward his office. The door was slightly ajar. I didn't knock. I heard his voice before I saw him. "Don't worry," he said. "She'll take care of it. Maddie always does what I ask." There was a pause. Then he added, "I think she's pregnant. I saw the test in the trash this morning, 2 lines. But she won't say anything. She'll keep quiet. That's just who she is." My breath caught. He continued, his voice low and cruel. "If I handle it right, she'll get rid of it. Then it'll just be you and me. Finally. Just us, Rachel." Rachel. I froze. There, in his private office, where he had told me so many times he was working late, he was plotting to erase the life we'd created. My child. My body. Reduced to a problem he could manipulate away. My fingers tightened around the stem of the wine glass I was holding. I wanted to burst in, scream, demand answers. But something inside me said, "Not yet." I turned around and walked back to the dining room, forcing a smile across my face as I placed the dessert on the table. Apple tart with almond cream, Cynthia's favorite. My hands were steady. My eyes dry. Then reappeared minutes later, smiling like nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek, thanked me for pulling everything together. I looked at him. Really looked. And I smiled back with a coldness he didn't recognize. Kind of smile a woman wears when something inside her has died, and something else, something stronger, is being born in its place. That night, after the guests left and the dishes were stacked neatly in the sink, Ethan walked into the kitchen, his sleeves rolled up, acting like the doting husband. "You made tonight perfect, Maddie." "Thank you," he said, reaching for my waist. I stepped back. "I know," I said quietly. "I heard everything, Ethan. The call. The plan. Rachel. The test. What you want me to do with the baby." He went pale. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Don't," I cut him off. "Not tonight. Don't lie to me. Not now." I didn't wait for an answer. I walked past him through the hallway into the living room, locked the door behind me, curled up on the couch in the dark. My hand rested over my stomach as I whispered to the tiny life inside me, "I'll protect you. No matter what." I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I knew I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now. Pain would have to wait. Survival came first. The next morning, just after sunrise, Ethan slipped out the front door for his so-called morning run. It was the same excuse he'd been using for weeks, maybe months, and I no longer believed a word of it. The second I heard his car drive off, yes, he didn't even run, I walked straight to his home office. His laptop was right there on the desk. Open. Waiting. I sat down, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The password? Rachel 2020. I nearly threw up right then. When the desktop loaded, I found a folder named Q4 Project. It wasn't password protected. Just sitting there in plain sight, as if he never imagined I'd be brave or desperate enough to look. Inside were dozens of files. One of the first was a photo, Rachel in a red silk dress, lounging on our backyard patio furniture. Her drink in one hand, her heels kicked off beside her. Another was a screenshot of a calendar invite labeled Client Call, which was, in fact, a dinner reservation at the same bistro Ethan once took me on our anniversary. Then I opened the audio file. Rachel's voice, light and flirtatious. "So, when do I get to stop sneaking around like this?" She giggled. Ethan answered without hesitation. "Soon. Once she takes care of it. He was talking about our baby. But it didn't stop there. I opened his drafts folder in his email. And there it was. A message he hadn't sent yet, but had clearly poured his whole twisted truth into. Madison's not strong. She'll do what I say. She's grateful just to be part of the Caldwell family. Once she terminates, I'll start the divorce process. Terminate. Divorce. Grateful. The words sliced through me like glass. My body shook as I ran to the bathroom, collapsing to my knees, heaving into the toilet, not from morning sickness, but from the weight of betrayal. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was violation. Erasure. I had loved a man who was planning my erasure. But I didn't let myself spiral. Instead, I wiped my mouth, stood up, and walked back to the office. I screen captured everything, every file, every message, every pixel of deceit, and sent them all to my personal email. Then I did something Ethan never expected. Called Sarah. Sarah Miller, my best friend since freshman year of college. 33, fiercely protective, now a freelance journalist who had once exposed a local congressman's affair. We met at a quiet cafe just off Main Street, one of those tucked-away spots with cinnamon-laced coffee and too many plants in the windows. I didn't hold anything back. When I was done, Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was firm. Her eyes burned with clarity. "Madison, you're not the one falling apart here. He is. This child is yours. And you will decide what comes next, not him." I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I believed her. Not yet. Not fully. Till her words gave me something I hadn't had since that morning, ground beneath my feet. That afternoon, I walked into the law offices of Olivia Harper, a seasoned attorney recommended by Sarah's sister. Olivia was in her mid-40s, with silver threads in her sleek black hair and eyes sharp enough to cut through pretense. She didn't waste time. I told her everything. The call. The woman. The draft email. Pregnancy. I showed her the proof. She listened carefully, taking notes without interrupting, her face unreadable. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then she looked up and said, "You're stronger than you think, Madison. What he's done, both emotionally and legally, is dangerous. You're pregnant, and we have evidence of intent to coerce. The court won't take that lightly." Her voice didn't waver. She wasn't trying to comfort me. She was building a case. And in that moment, I realized, so was I. For the first time in days, I could breathe. Confronting Ethan was the hardest part. That evening, he tried to pretend we were still something salvageable, as if all he needed was a calm tone and some carefully chosen words to glue the pieces of us back together. He stepped into the hallway, hands open, voice soft. "Can we talk? Like adults?" I didn't flinch. I didn't lower my gaze. I stood with my back straight, facing him across the same hallway where we used to laugh over silly grocery lists and bump into each other with toothbrushes in hand. "Do you remember," I asked, voice steady, "when you told me I was strong?" He blinked. Confused. Silent. "When I worked 2 jobs to help pay for my mother's medical debt. When your father called me ordinary at our first Thanksgiving dinner and I didn't cry." His face paled slightly, the words tightening around his throat. "You've forgotten who I am, Ethan," I said. "But I haven't. I'm not weak. And I will never do what you want." I watched his jaw tighten, watched the weight of realization settle across his shoulders. But I didn't wait for his reaction. I turned, walked into the living room, and locked the door behind me. And that night, I began planning the rest of my life. By the following week, I had filed for divorce. No hesitation. No delay. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. With Olivia Harper guiding me through every step, we filed a petition that not only requested full custody of my unborn child, but also cited Ethan's manipulative behavior, his emotional coercion, and his expressed desire to pressure me into terminating the pregnancy. Olivia made sure the language was precise. Cold, clinical, irrefutable. We included the audio clip, the unsent email, the photos, everything. It wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. It was about control. Mine. I remember the way the courthouse steps felt under my shoes that day, solid, grounding. The sky was overcast, but I welcomed the gray. Matched the storm that had passed through my life and left everything raw and honest. When I stepped outside the building, I paused for a moment. I placed one hand gently on my belly, not caring who was watching, not worrying about how it looked. And I whispered, "I'll protect you." 3 simple words. A vow. A truth. And I meant every syllable. Because this wasn't about Ethan anymore. It wasn't about humiliation or broken trust or even the pieces of love I still hadn't fully buried. It was about this child. This innocent, unseen life that had already been treated like a problem. Not by me, but by the man who was supposed to be its father. And no more pretending. No more waiting for change. No more bargaining with someone who saw me as disposable. Ethan had chosen control. I chose freedom. That afternoon, back at home, I stood in the nursery we once talked about renovating, the room with pale green walls and untouched furniture catalogs tucked under the bed. And for the first time since it all began, I started to imagine what life might actually look like on the other side of heartbreak. It would be hard. It would be lonely. But it would be mine. And that made all the difference. 3 months later, I moved out of the old house. There was no ceremony to it, just a quiet Saturday morning, a rented truck, and a heart that had finally stopped looking back. I found a small apartment in Burlington. It wasn't much, but it had sunlight in the mornings and enough space to start again. The second bedroom, what would be my daughter's room, was the first place I touched with intention. I tore down the faded wallpaper, the one Ethan had once said we'd get to someday, and painted the walls a soft, warm yellow. The kind that catches the morning light like honey. It reminded me of hope, of breath, of beginning. I named her Ava Rose. Ava for life. Rose for the beauty that grows even from thorns. Together, her name meant something to me, a new dawn after darkness. I found an old crib at a second-hand shop. The wood was scratched, a little worn, but it felt right, like something with history like me. I assembled it myself. Every screw turned, every brushstroke of paint, every small mural I painted on the wall was a promise to her. We're going to be okay. Ethan tried to come back. Started with flowers, roses, lilies, and then orchids, as if price could undo pain. Then came the letters. Long, regretful paragraphs about mistakes and second chances. He left a voicemail one night that nearly broke me. His voice raw, full of tears, begging for a chance to be the father I should have been from the beginning. But I didn't respond. I knew better than to confuse guilt with change. Then, one rainy afternoon, I heard a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole, and there he was, standing in the pouring rain, drenched, hands shoved into his coat pockets like a boy caught in a storm of his own making. I opened the door just wide enough to be heard. But no more. No less. "Ethan," I said calmly, "you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose betrayal. Step by step, moment by moment. You chose it every time you lied, every time you let her into our space, every time you planned your life without us in it." He stared at me, silent, rain running down his face. "And that choice," I said, "cost you everything." I closed the door. Not in anger, not in triumph, but in quiet, irrevocable clarity. In the months that followed, I rebuilt myself. I returned to my job as a financial analyst and started taking on freelance projects that allowed me to work from home. It wasn't easy. The hours were strange and the sleep was scarce, but the rhythm of work gave me something stable to stand on. Sarah became my lifeline. She brought fresh fruit, prenatal vitamins, and gossip so absurd it made me laugh until I couldn't breathe. She never pitied me, just stood beside me. Solid, unwavering, loyal. One night, after a particularly long day, I opened my laptop and began to write, not in a journal, not for therapy, but as a voice. A voice for women like me. Women who were told they were too emotional, too quiet, too lucky to complain. I wrote the truth. Not polished, not pitiful, just real. One of my essays about betrayal during pregnancy was picked up by a small online magazine. I didn't expect anything to come of it. But within days, I received dozens of messages from readers. Women, mothers, strangers. Your story is my story. I've never said this out loud, but now I feel like I can. Thank you for saying what I've never had the words for. I read each message in silence, hand resting over the curve of my belly, Ava shifting gently inside me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't just feel strong. I felt seen. The day Ava was born, the world stopped spinning. Not in fear, not in chaos, but in awe. Sarah drove me to the hospital after my contractions began just past midnight. She stayed with me through the long, grueling hours, her hand gripping mine during every surge of pain, her voice steady even when I felt like I might break. And then, after what felt like a lifetime and a heartbeat all at once, they placed her on my chest. She was pink and warm and perfect, her tiny fists curling against my skin, her cry barely a whisper before settling into my heartbeat. I cried not because of the pain or the memories that tried to rise, but because she was here. The light, my light, the reason I had held on through every storm. "Hello, Ava," I whispered, my voice breaking as I kissed the top of her damp head. "It's just you and me, baby girl. And that's enough." A few months after her birth, I received a letter. No return address. Handwritten. Paper slightly wrinkled, as if it had traveled long and far to reach me. The handwriting was unmistakable, Ethan's. Even after everything, I knew the slope of his E's and the tilt of his T's. "I don't deserve to be Ava's father," he wrote. "But if there ever comes a time when you feel she should know me, I'll be here. I'm sorry, Madison. For all of it." I read the letter once, then again, and then folded it carefully, placing it at the back of Ava's baby journal, beneath the ultrasound photos and the hospital bracelet and the birth certificate. Not to forgive him, but to remind myself that choices shape destinies. He had made his, and I had made mine. The spring after Ava's first birthday, I published my first book. It wasn't flashy. No book tours or morning show appearances. Just quiet release into the world, an offering to those who needed it. The Woman Who Built Her Own Dawn. Title had come to me in the middle of a feeding at 3 a.m., Ava nestled against my chest, the sun just starting to warm the edges of the windows. I looked at her and realized this wasn't just a survival story. It was a resurrection. The book wasn't a bestseller, but it didn't need to be. It reached the inboxes, nightstands, and tear-stained coffee tables of women who messaged me saying, "You wrote what I couldn't say out loud. Thank you for making me feel less alone. I didn't know I could start again, but now I think I might." And in the final page of that book I wrote, "Your father walked away, but I stayed. You were never abandoned. I chose you every single day." It was the truest thing I had ever written. One quiet Sunday morning, I stood on the balcony of our apartment. Ava was in my arms, her curls tickling my cheek, her little fingers gripping the sleeve of my robe. The early sunlight filtered through the maple trees that lined our street, casting soft shadows across our feet. Birds chirped somewhere nearby, and the air smelled faintly of rain from the night before. It was nothing spectacular, no milestone, no dramatic moment, but it was everything. I kissed her forehead and swayed gently, her tiny body pressed against mine. "Look what we built, my love," I whispered, my lips brushing her skin. "Just you and me." She let out a soft giggle, a sound that melted every scar, and I closed my eyes for a moment to memorize it, the warmth, the peace, the stillness that had once felt so impossible. And right then, I knew it with unshakable certainty. We had made it through. We had outlived the wreckage. We were no longer surviving. We were living. People often ask me now quietly how I did it. How I got through the betrayal, the pregnancy, the loneliness, the nights when grief knocked like an old friend who wouldn't go away. And I never say something inspirational. I never pretend it was easy. 'Cause it wasn't. But I always say this: pain doesn't get to define you. Your response does. I didn't let Ethan break me. I didn't let abandonment shape Ava's identity. I didn't let loss write the ending to our story. Instead, I built something from it. Day by day, word by word, choice by choice. Now, when Ava sleeps, I sometimes pull out that old baby journal. I look at the letter Ethan wrote, still folded in the back, untouched. And I think, maybe someday she'll want to read it. Maybe she won't. But either way, she'll know the truth. She'll know her mother didn't walk away. She'll know that love, real love, isn't made of words or flowers or regretful voicemails. It's made of presence, of showing up, of staying. And I stayed. For her. For me. For the dawn we built from ruin. 5 lessons I learned after becoming a single mom in the wake of betrayal. If you've followed my story this far, thank you for listening, for witnessing, and maybe even for seeing a part of yourself in it. I'm not here to paint myself as a survivor with all the answers. I didn't rise overnight. I didn't always feel brave. But step by step, I reclaimed the parts of myself that were buried under silence, disappointment, and fear. Here are 5 things I've learned, not just from becoming a single mother, but from facing betrayal, grief, and starting over. 1. Silence doesn't mean weakness, it's a form of power. There were days when I didn't shout, didn't cry in public, didn't even respond. People mistook that for passivity. But inside, I was observing, collecting, processing. Silence gave me time to gather my strength. We often feel pressure to react instantly, to defend ourselves loudly. But the quiet decisions made in solitude? They're often the strongest ones. Your silence can be a fortress, not a prison. 2. Never trade your self-worth for acceptance. For years, I tried to be enough for someone who only valued control. I confused being welcomed into a prestigious family with being loved. I bent to fit into someone else's definition of worthy. The truth? If you have to shrink yourself to be loved, it's not love, it's performance. You should never have to compromise your dignity just to stay. Your value isn't up for negotiation. 3. A child doesn't need a perfect family, they need one honest, loving parent. When I found out I was pregnant, I grieved the family I thought my child would have. But Ava taught me something. Children don't measure love by numbers. They feel it in consistency, in warmth, in your voice at bedtime, and your arms when they cry. One present, emotionally grounded parent can do more than a full household built on lies. Love doesn't need symmetry, it needs sincerity. For forgiveness is for you, not for them. The moment I forgave Ethan wasn't some big, dramatic gesture. It was quiet, internal. I didn't do it for him, I did it so I could finally breathe again. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. Doesn't mean you forget. It means you're choosing not to drag the weight of their betrayal into every tomorrow. Forgiveness, in its truest form, is about choosing peace over bitterness. 5. You can rewrite your story at any time. There is no deadline for healing. No age limit for starting over. I wrote the woman who built her own dawn while rocking Ava to sleep, in the early morning hours when the world was still. I wrote it not because I had all the answers, but because I had the courage to speak truthfully. Whatever your story is, you have the right to pick up the pen. Begin where you are. Begin messy. Begin scared. Just begin. So if this journey touched you, moved you, or reminded you of your own strength in any way, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the quiet battles we fight and win every single day.